Hello, all you unsung athletes. Welcome to the Unsung Athlete Podcast, where we give a voice to you, the unsung athlete, training every day, grinding without excuse, reward or not. I'm your host, Shannon Rose. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Unsung Athlete Podcast, where we give a voice to you, the unsung athlete. I'm your host, Shannon Rose, and I'm here with my own MMA coach, Nakita Kratzke. Longtime martial artist, abundant and heart-centered coach, skilled piano teacher, wife, and dog mama. Since I began training with you 4 years ago, I have had the privilege of watching you and Gus build your dream, creating a gym culture that is like no other, shaping and bringing up generations of martial artists. You have watched my own children grow up, where they have learned about life and strength from you. Nakita, you are an inspiration, and I mean that. And I'm so honored to have you here. So let's get started.
Thanks for having me.
You know me well. I have to start with love. So tell me, what do you love and what are you grateful for today?
I love my family. I love my husband Gus and our dog. And I'm really grateful for the life that we've built together. And I'm really grateful that I'm getting to pursue my passion with my career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's no small thing.
No, it's a really big thing.
And I know you've been an athlete for a long time. You've trained in martial arts and you coach martial arts and you continue to build out your gym here at Burnsville Martial Arts Academy. Yet today, in this moment, do you consider yourself an athlete and why?
That is a question I honestly struggle with a little bit sometimes. I know I'm athletic and I'm physical and I move every day, but I'm also surrounded by people who are also doing that and sometimes doing that at a really high level. So when I look at it, I'm like, I know I'm an athlete, but I'm not pursuing like quote unquote athletic goals that I like view some of our students pursuing, where they're looking to be, professional athletes in that sense.
Right.
But it's something that like I have to remember as a personal journey, and that like I'm an athlete in my own way and I might be guiding people in a way that's not the direction I want to head, but I can still be athletic for myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great answer. I mean, honestly, I struggle with that constantly. Being in my mid 40s and watching all these other people just like shining and getting in the ring and doing these dream things. Like to me, they're athletes.
Exactly.
They're performing active athletes. But when you think of athlete, it's just being proficient in your craft. And you, I mean, of anyone in this gym, are so technically proficient. Watching you demo is just a beautiful thing. So, tell me your origin story. When did you first consider yourself an athlete?
I think I first considered myself an athlete in childhood, for sure. Probably I didn't think about it specifically until I was probably around like 9 or 10. But I know that I grew up moving. Like my parents, most of our activities that we did were like bike rides or rollerblading, or we go out and play basketball, or most of the stuff we did was like outside and active and moving, which is something I'm honestly really grateful for now, because it just taught me that, enjoying life is usually enjoying movement.
Yes.
But in terms of like something organized, it was probably when I was probably around 9 or 10, when I was starting to train Taekwondo much more seriously. I started doing Taekwondo as a kid because my mom did, she did like a workout class that was, I don't know, it was like a step class where they'd step up on something and they kind of throw some
back in the day that was in. Yes.
She would bring me and I'd sit in the back and I used to imitate it a little bit. And so she thought, oh, I bet Taekwondo or martial arts would be something I'd like. And I loved it.
Oh.
And I remember when I was training for my black belt, I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. I think I started Taekwondo when I was about 5. So I was like 10 or 11 at that point. And I remember at that point, like you had to take like a bunch of pre-tests and it was really serious. And so that was the first time I remember sitting at home, like lifting weights on my own and like doing things that I
Yeah.
like didn't really know if it would help me, but I was like, I need to be,
Yeah.
I need to be physical for this. And that's probably like was like the turning point for me of like, I had some goals I wanted to achieve and knew that the only way I could achieve them was if I put in extra work and time on my own.
Dang.
And that's when I think that athletic mindset made its shift.
How old were you again?
I was probably 10.
Jeez,
Yeah.
Nakita. I had to have goals and work for them at 10.
Yes. Yep. I remember. Yeah, it was fifth grade or fifth grade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me, well, Zoe, my youngest, she's like that.
Yep. It helps a lot for me.
Okay, so I would love to know, did you do any other sports or what other martial arts have you done?
Yeah. I for most of my like early childhood, I just did martial arts. So I did taekwondo from ages 5 till 15. Uh, and then I think I did like a couple like soccer camps or
Yeah.
basketball things, but I never had much interest in team sports. I didn't enjoy that much. And I didn't like, I wasn't very good at them and I was a little confused about what was happening. Where I felt like when I was doing martial arts, you're with people, but you just get to focus on what you individually are doing. And that was much easier for me, um, just to stay focused. So I did Taekwondo. And then when I was 15, I just started to get a little bit bored with the same style. Like it was still like a cool martial art, but I didn't feel like I was learning or progressing at the rate I wanted to. And so then I switched and found a different school that did Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu and Kali and JKD. And there was just so much offerings that I felt like I'd never be able to get bored.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so I switched and did that. But I also swam a little bit in high school. I swam my freshman and sophomore year of high school. But I specifically was doing that because I was told you should do a sport to make friends. So
Nakita, you have to make friends and not just work on yourself.
yes. So I'm actually grateful because I did like you had a team and that
Yeah.
was like a really big thing, but I did not like swimming.
Really?
Yeah, it was really hard.
I mean, the breath work
Mm-hmm.
and physically and but how was that? I mean, why did you think swimming was so hard and yet martial arts just felt so easy? Do you think you just loved it more or what?
I think I loved it more. Swimming felt like when I was doing it, um, it felt like I was actively like quote unquote working out. Like that feeling where you're just like tired, but I wasn't necessarily having fun when I was
Yeah.
doing it. Where when I'm doing martial arts, I'm really tired, but the whole time I feel like my brain is engaged. I'm doing something that is like bringing me a ton of
Yeah.
joy. And so it doesn't feel like it's really a workout in that sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get that. There's times when, well, particularly when I'm here at, the academy and working out, there's times when I'm just in the zone and I don't feel anything,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I'm done and I'm like, oh my gosh, it hits you.
Exactly.
But when you're in it, you don't feel it. And then there's times where I'm working out, doing kettlebells, and I just don't want to lift that thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It just sucks.
Yeah,
and you
totally
just know
understand.
you have to do that. So that's probably what swimming felt like.
That is definitely what it felt like for me.
So, okay. 3 years ago, you and Gus, husband and wife team, you opened up your dream,
Mm-hmm.
right? Burnsville Martial Arts Academy, a gym that, I mean, as I describe it to people, it's not just for the fighter. I mean, you teach combat martial arts, but it's not just for the fighter, and it's also not just for the person looking to get a good workout. You opened up this something like really special, that's inclusive, and it's just a magical place that has this community, not like any other gym or martial arts place that I've been a part of. And I've also seen my kids, other kids grow up here and launch into the world. What does it feel like to have done that and see it? I mean, that was just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now to see also this looming growth on your horizon, like, what does that feel like? And how do you think you guys made that happen?
Yeah, it feels, it doesn't really feel real, honestly. Like sometimes we're so focused in the work that I don't notice as like I have to like pull my head out and look around and see like, wow, this is like exactly what we've been dreaming for and it's happening, you know?
Yeah.
But when on the day to day, sometimes I'm just so focused on what we're doing or what class I'm teaching that it's hard to remember to take that pause.
Yeah.
But when I do take that pause and I can look around and see like people training and working really hard and see people making friendships with each other and watching like this community start to grow of people who have like very similar goals. They just want to like self-improvement in whatever area that happens to be for them, and seeing everybody of tons of different backgrounds like lifting each other up, it's like really overwhelming actually. How good it feels.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I remember from growing up, and I know that Gus has the same memories, and we just wanted people to be able to experience the same feelings we did from our training and our past. And like some of the best lessons I've learned, the best friendships I've forged, like some of those best moments in my life came from being in a martial arts school. And to be able to see like that starting to happen for others because of what we're building is really fulfilling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, one thing I just realized too, even though my kids have been training in this gym forever, they're off doing school sports. But one thing you said was martial arts will always be here for them
Mhm.
whenever they're ready to come back. So, and I love that mentality because it's so true. They should be off doing these school sports and taking trips and having these experiences. But when they're ready, this will always be a home that they can come back to.
Exactly. That's how it was for me when I did swimming. I like had to pause my training
Yeah.
at that time, but I knew that after swimming season was done, I was just going back
Yeah.
to the gym, you know?
Yeah.
And that was like your home base for whatever else you're going to do.
I know. So, what would you say, I mean, besides this, or you can expand on it, is like one of your biggest accomplishments as an athlete? What would you say that is?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess this gym doesn't feel like an accomplishment as an athlete per se. It's like an accomplishment maybe as like as a coach and like
Yeah.
building that. But as an athlete, probably one of my biggest accomplishments was when I tested for my instructorship under Master Chai.
Yeah.
That was probably like one of the biggest moments for me. And at the school I trained at the Collie group, testing under him was very self-directed. So like you were kind of given permission to do it and train for it, but it wasn't something that there was necessarily someone guiding you all
Yeah.
the way to how to do it. And so me and my training partner, Shona, we were given like, okay, this is like your general guideline of what to do. But the expectation was that her and I put in the time and the work on our own and then would come to our coach of like, this is what we've progressed on. And then she would give us more things to do. And so I think that was one of the first times that I had like a really big goal that was really self-directed,
Yeah.
where like I knew that if I chose not to show up, it just wouldn't happen. It wasn't like somebody was going to hold my hand during that process. I mean, Shona held my hand, but we held each other's hands.
Different. It's different.
But
That's accountability.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was because I never did like fighting or competition. That wasn't something I pursued. This was the like probably like scariest thing that I was going into, because the holders that are holding for those tests are trying to beat the crap out of you, and I didn't know exactly what that experience would be like. And so being able to have trained hard enough for that where I felt incredibly prepared and confident going in was really exciting for me.
So, I mean, for other listeners who aren't familiar with what level of testing that was, so what level of testing or armband color is that?
Yes, that is for your black and white armband, which is the first level of being an instructor. So you go to your black armband first, and then once you test under Master Chai, then you become an instructor under him
Yeah.
directly. Mm-hmm.
And who's Master Chai?
Good question. Master Chai is the man who brought Muay Thai to the United States. So he came to the US in the late 1960s, and he started touring and traveling and teaching people in the US what Muay Thai was. And since then has founded what's called the World Thai Boxing Association,
Yeah.
which has schools all around the world. He is the head of like the national Thai Boxing Association tournament that happens every year that people come from all over the nation to compete at. And he's just an incredible teacher in person.
Yeah, and I've been to some of his seminars, and he adores you and Gus.
We adore him too.
Love you guys so much. It's really incredible to see. So, um, tell me about your comeback story. So, as you think about what drives you to keep going, and we all have an underdog or comeback story that has helped us get here. Maybe something that may have been out of your control, or something that forced you out of being an athlete where you had to come back from that. Tell me what your comeback story was.
My comeback story is probably not physical, but more maybe mental.
Yeah.
I've never had and luckily, I've never had any significant injury or anything that's like kept me away from training. But I think the hardest part for me to like rediscover what being an athlete meant was once I really turned my mind to coaching and really tried to develop that skill as a coach, I started to associate like this thing I love, martial arts, as like a job, right? And
Yeah.
I love that it's my job, of course, but it became something that I was so focused on, like the development of others and how are my classes and really refining more of a like a mental skill versus my physical skills, that I started to, if I'm being like completely honest, lose a little bit of my love for training.
Yeah.
And that hit really heavy about when we opened our gym. So when we opened our gym, first thing, I did have a slight knee injury, so I couldn't train very well for the first like 3 or 4 months we were open. But I was just so like focused on teaching and we were at the gym all the time that the last thing I wanted to do after a long day was train. And I got enough out of the habit that I started to be a little bit afraid about training more. I liked to only train at that moment with Gus because I was like, he's someone I feel safe with. I can be exhausted and tired and he doesn't care, right? So he was like my main training partner during this period of time. But I started to like have a little bit of self-doubt of like, what am I doing coaching all these people and helping them if I'm like, if this isn't something I like am super super passionate about anymore? What's going on with me? And recently I thought to myself, what if I try a physical activity that's not martial arts? Like, what if I try something and like rediscover this love for moving my body? And I've been working with Dr. Robin with Move Forward Physiotherapy and joined in doing strength. And I've been doing that for a while now. And doing that and being able to do something where I felt like I was a beginner with no pressure or expectation from anybody else about how I was going to do was the most freeing thing for me. And I've been lifting and loving it and like loving to watch my progress every day.
Yeah.
And feeling like nobody is looking at me with any thoughts besides like, oh, she's just learning how to lift, you know? And upon rediscovering that, I've like actually started getting really back into my own martial art training. I think I just needed like a reminder of like physical movement doesn't have to just be like a performance. I was starting to view it more of a performance for the students. Like I want what I'm doing to look good enough so that you guys can emulate it, right? And so I wasn't viewing it as just something for me and my physical growth anymore. I was putting so much outward pressure on it that really mentally I lost that athletic feeling.
Yeah.
So finding and rediscovering like that moving is just really fun. And the whole reason we started this gym was because it's something I love, has been a really, really good time. And now I'm like feeling like I love joining in and sparring with everybody and jumping in and hitting pads and like getting back into rolling and doing jujitsu more. And I think I just had a big mental block for a bit. And now that I'm pushing through it, gosh, I like him. I'm remembering like, no, this is why we opened the school. This is why I love this stuff, you know?
That is so, I mean, thank you for sharing that, because I think people do lose sight of the fact that this mental churn and burn and coaching, but also performing, and all eyes are on you. I mean, you have how many members now?
We have about 350.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some of those classes, there's like 70 to 90 people in those classes, and
Mhm.
they're all looking at you, and you've committed to helping them in their journey. And that's so much output. And so, yeah, the last thing you want to do is go hit pads and put more out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your tactic for finding something that is just yours again
Yes.
and that just feeds you. And I love that you said that that white belt mentality of being a beginner at something is freeing, because I think a lot of people think of doing something new that they've never done is actually causes a lot of anxiety, and they're afraid that they're going to look like idiots. And I love how you reframed that to say, it's awesome. No one has any expectations of me.
Exactly.
They don't know how much I was lifting before or not lifting. So if I'm lifting light weights, like, who cares?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And coming back to that mentality of it's okay to not be great at something has honestly helped me with just like vulnerability with
Yeah.
training too, of being like, hey, if today is not like my best day hitting pads or I'm getting like pieced up in sparring, it really doesn't matter. Like every day is different and not every day is supposed to be a great day of
Right.
training. And like going back to something where every day is not great for strength because it's very new for me. That it was just a good reminder that like as long as I'm pursuing something and I'm focused on my internal goals and only comparing myself to myself, then that's the journey we all should be on.
Oh, I think that is such a good strain for people. And it kind of answers one of the questions I usually ask, which is, how do you keep yourself going? And so maybe it is a combination of just finding things you love, reconnecting with love. Where do you work in rest and recovery into all of this?
Um, we we I do a lot of things like for my own recovery, I need to do something where I'm very focused on something not athletic. So I do like I read or I garden a lot, or doing something like quiet and creative really helps me recharge. And then try to get a lot of sleep. That's the big one for us. Mhm.
I remember you were kind of figuring out that balance when you first opened, because it was just all the time. You were here setting
Yes.
things up. It was either physically like sweeping floors, or it was training or developing curriculum. And I just remember you, and then you guys would just all of a sudden be like, we need to take a weekend. And then you'd be gone, and then you'd come back, and then it was just go, go, go. So do you think you've found a better balance now?
Yes, now we have a much better balance. I have like a day off now, and we use that day for a lot of recovery. And honestly, now that I am being more physical, I also do feel less tired, which is like the truth. It's been my whole life.
It's
Like
so true.
like anytime I'm like training or working out or doing anything, I always have more energy than when I'm not. It's just when you're stuck in a space where you're not, that it's hard to like remind yourself that like if you get tired today, you're going to feel better tomorrow, you know.
Right?
Mhm.
Right. Um, okay. So I know in my own journey, there is always that one person who sparked the athlete in me. Who is that person in your life? I mean, maybe it's more than one, but maybe there's somebody who sticks out in your life, that you'd like to thank. And how have they helped you and inspired you to become an unsung athlete, an everyday athlete?
Mhm. I have one specific person. Her name's Linda Angelis, and she was one of my instructors when I did Taekwondo as a kid.
Yeah.
And she was, I don't remember how old she was at the time, but she was a little bit older than most of the instructors. And she was like, all of me and my friends thought she was like the most badass woman we'd ever seen. She like worked harder than anybody.
Yeah.
Her classes were always much harder than the other classes. And she ran a kickboxing class on the weekend. And she ran it, I think, specifically just because she wanted to,
Yeah.
because kickboxing was not part of the Taekwondo curriculum. And my friends and I would go to that class like religiously. And she would come up with like super hard workouts. And it was always like a challenge of like who could hold the plank the longest, and she would always win those ones. And she was
She
like,
would win
she
against
was
you
so
kids.
strong. Yes,
Jeez.
she was just incredible, and she like just loved training and working out.
Yeah.
And around I think it was like 2004 time, she was like getting really into kettlebells. around the time that like kettlebells were like starting to like pop up a little bit.
Yeah.
And my mom would go train with her. They would like meet together during the days because they had become friends, and they would train and do kettlebells together. And then my mom would bring me in the summer. And so I started learning kettlebells, I think when I was like 10 or 11, and like thinking it was so cool. And she then went and like opened up a kettlebell school in the future. And she's like just been an athletic person who I've admired my whole life. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that's one person who took her passions and just kept building upon them and opened up her own place too.
And yeah, exactly. And like everybody else that was coaching at the Taekwondo school, most of them were like in their young 20s, like they were like right out of college. And I feel like she was in her 40s or 50s. And I just remember thinking like, gosh, I want to be just like her.
Hashtag goals. Oh, I love that. And the fact that her stuff was the most challenging and the hardest, but that ignited something in you.
Oh, it definitely did. All right.
So what do you want? I mean, thinking of her legacy, what do you want your legacy to be? So when people think of Nakita Kratzke, the unsung athlete, what do you want them to think and say about you?
I want them to remember me for one, I want to be remembered for being like kind. So I want people to like think of me and think that like that was a person they felt safe with, or that was a person who they felt supported by. So I really want that. I really care deeply about people, which is a big reason we started this gym, because I care so much about all of our students and I want them to succeed, and I love watching them grow. So I want them to look at me and feel like that I help them with their goals in that sense. But I also want people to remember me as somebody who like stood by what she said. So that's been something that like when I tell people I want you to, do XYZ for conditioning, I want them to also know that that's something I could also do too. I'm not just telling you to do something I wouldn't want you to do or I wouldn't do myself. Um, and so I want people to, especially now as I'm like rediscovering this passion for what I'm doing, I want them to like see me also participating with them and be like, gosh, if she can do it, I can do it, that kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, all the things you've said, you absolutely exude in just astronomical amounts. I mean, you create safe spaces all around you. I say this constantly that this gym and you and the community you've built is an extension of our family. Like it's familial. I trust that while I'm training, and when my kids were little, I mean, they were training with Gus at 3, 5, and they would be hanging out in the lobby doing their homework or taking a nap while I'm, and I had full trust and that, the environment you create is just so safe and so welcoming and you accommodate so much. I mean, I myself have really great times. I know I'm really strong. I'm not very fast. I don't come to all the extra classes because have a lot going on in my life, but I always, no matter what, feel welcomed, cared for. So all the things you want, you already are doing.
Oh, that's really good to hear. That's awesome.
All right. So our final question. 30 seconds to answer, just whatever you think about. What is one thing you want to say to inspire the world?
I would say this is advice I'd even give myself, so I would say that to myself as well. But to remember that we're all on our own journey and that it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about you and what anybody else, like, their opinions are. Like, as long as you're pursuing your own goals and your own truth and know you're on your right path, then that's all you can really do is keep going.
I really, really love that. And that to me is a daily thing.
Yeah.
You have to constantly remind yourself of that. I know I do.
It's hard.
Thank you for being here and showing us all the heart of an unsung athlete.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you for joining us on the Unsung Athlete podcast, where we give a voice to you, the unsung athlete. I'm your host, Shannon Rose. Keep grinding without excuse.